मानस भजरे गुरुचरणं दूसर भवसागर तरणं मानस भजरे गुरुचरणं दूसर भवसागर तरणं गुरु महाराज गुरु जय जय गुरु महाराज गुरु जय जय सत्य साईनाथ सद्गुरु जय जय सत्य साईनाथ सद्गुरु जय जय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवाय नमः ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवाय नमः अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणा शिवा अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुण शिवा ओंकारं भव ओंकारं भव ओंकारं भव ओम नमो भाव ओंकारं भव ओंकारं भव ओंकारं भव ओम नमो बाबा ओम नमो बाबा ओम नमो बाबा Hi everyone, good morning to everyone. So today's conversation is built upon the last conversation or the last video, which is how the videos will be. It's one being built upon the other, right? So the last video I would have spoken about the difference between preferences and principles, right? I call it differences in that video, but what I really meant was preferences. What is the difference between preferences and principles? So I'll just do a brief recap of that again. Preferences being so I would have used relationships to demonstrate this the difference between preferences and principles. And in terms of a lasting relationship and how you should build a lasting relationship based upon principles and not just preferences, right? If you want a lasting relationship, it should be built upon principles as opposed to preferences. What is preferences? Preferences in the context of relationships we're talking about, right? So whilst we are learning the natural laws of the universe, we are also learning how to navigate our relationships, right? Particularly romantic relationships, right? So it's like killing two birds with one stone, not literally kill because we are about non-violence in here, right? But figuratively speaking, killing two birds with one stone, meaning I'm conducting this video series to both teach natural laws and principles, yamas and niyamas, moral conduct, as well as how to incorporate that into our romantic relationships, right? To build a lasting relationship. One that is God-centered, one that has the support of the universe at the center of it, right? So preferences is something like, what's your favorite color? I like green, you like blue. I like green, you like black, right? That's a preference. Preference is you prefer to go to the movies to enjoy yourself. I prefer to go to the beach to enjoy myself. You prefer to lime occasionally with your friends. I prefer to stay at home and surf the internet or read a book or something, right? That is the difference. That is preferences. Our living habits, how we choose to do things, how we prefer to do things, right? You prefer to cook on an electric stove, I prefer to cook on a gas stove, right? Preference, right? Preferences can also relate to this term called love languages and relationships, right? Love languages. You prefer to receive love through gifts. I prefer to receive love through time, energy, spending time with each other, right? Differences in terms of how we would like to receive love, right? Differences in terms of our preference in terms of receiving, right? Principles, on the other hand, a principle is, as I was saying in my previous video, the foundation upon which a foundation or the underlying foundation upon which we act is a foundation upon which we act. So whereas if I choose green as opposed to blue, if I choose to use the gas stove instead of the electric stove, those things are not directly or indirectly causing harm to anybody else, right? It's a preference. It's a preference that I have for doing something, right? That is absolutely different from holding a principle, which is a core underlying value, is a value system, is based on a system of morality, right? It is based on a foundation of truth, right? A foundation of truth, right? So an example, I give an example of the most important principle in my last video. The most important principle is non-violence, also called ahimsa in Sanskrit. Ahimsa is non-violence, right? Non-violence. Now in another video I'll go on to speak about when violence is actually permitted, when you are allowed to conduct violence. But if you are a regular free agent, nobody is interfering with you, right? Nobody is interfering with you, and you're just going about freely living your life. You should strive to live your life in a way that does not incorporate violence through not directly going to beat up anybody, through not participating in organizations that beat up anybody, right? And not consuming products that directly include violence, right? At least that's where you should start, with the direct violence, right? Such as the non-consumption of animal flesh, ceasing the consumption of animal flesh, which is one of the major ways that can help your soul to evolve spiritually, right? Talking about spiritual evolution, how can you evolve your soul in this current lifetime? How can you evolve your soul in this current lifetime, right? And one of the ways that you can do that is to align yourself with particular principles. So this conversation is basically the same as the last video. It's just a reiteration of it, a reiteration of that which I discussed in my previous video, in case people were not very clear, right? In terms of the difference between our preferences and principles. So the principle of non-violence becomes now a premise. The principle is non-violence, as stated in all religions, plain, and is also in the mystery traditions, the mystery school of thought, such as the occulted mysteries, such as Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, and all that, right? So it's not just in the mainstream religions, it's there, and it's also in the esoteric or mystery school traditions and so on. So it's everywhere. This principle of non-violence is actually captured everywhere, right? It is eternal. That is why it is eternal. It is unchanging, right? And it is here for eternity, right? Let's just put it that way, right? So the only way that your soul could actually evolve to the next level, the only way for your soul to evolve to the next level is if you take this knowledge in and actually apply it to your life, right? This is not an overnight decision. It cannot be an overnight decision. It will take time to do, especially if you are accustomed consuming animal flesh. This is going to take a while for your body to readjust itself, right? To readjust itself, to recalibrate itself, right? So it will require a certain measure of research on your part in terms of health wise and incorporating or replacing your diet with the proper supplements if you are accustomed to consuming animal flesh and all that, in order to align with this principle of morality, or to align with this principle of non-violence, in order to assist your soul's evolution in this current lifetime that we are in, so that it will avoid having to come back here on earth to repeat the same lessons that we could very well learn and incorporate into our lifestyle in this lifetime that we are in, right? So this video is a reiteration of my previous video, just to clarify in case people did not get what I meant, because I used the term differences in my last video, but I meant preferences, right? The difference between, understanding the difference between preferences and principles,